in my family of 6, the 4 kids, my wife and I'm the only person who is not autistic. You know, this is a bit out of the ordinary. I mean, as a parent, I'm hopelessly outnumbered. Yeah, she's autistic. And by the time we were pregnant with our 4th, we're like, we really hope this child's autistic because we don't know how to deal with a neurotypical one. So we're kind of hoping it's autistic. Research, it's not just some random collection of YouTube clips that someone's put together saying, you know, is your kid looking like Dustin Hoffman from Rain Man? It's not like that. Let's not wait 2 years to find out they're not, and then another 2 years to find out whatever it is, you know. You don't necessarily have to wait 2 years before you can do something. Nothing to lose. You learn more about another aspect of our community. Again, it's all I know because I don't have any neurotypical children. I have kids tearing the house down playing because they don't respond to certain situations in a way that someone who is not. And when you throw PDA in the mix, then that gets really spicy and gets a bit interesting. Yes, it's good. You know, what did you learn? And then he might parrot back the question back to me like, oh, what did you learn? Dragon. I'm like, oh, Pachycephalosaurus. Pretty good locks and a pretty good fence. That's a tricky question, quote unquote problematic. The term non-verbal is, once you develop and embed a routine, the next step in that routine becomes a demand. So we're often late to appointments. Our kids don't know what the weather was in 1973 on a Monday, or that's not us. Oh, Peppa Pig. Yeah.
George loves dinosaurs. We suspect George is...
You ask him what's his favourite dinosaur. He knew all the planets, he knew the asteroids, he knew the dwarf planets, he could tell you facts about Neptune, Pluto, which one's the hottest, all that sort of stuff. It was really cool and it was fun. His special interest waned. And we're talking like scary monsters, we're not talking like cookie monsters, we're talking like jump scare kind of stuff. And so the adult autistic community came back to us and said, we know what's make-believe and we know what's not. It's such and such, you know, it's maki, it's haumea. Earning potential aside, you're never too old to learn, but you only get one childhood.
Hey, before we jump in, I've got a quick favor to ask. If you're enjoying the show, please hit that follow or subscribe button. It really helps the channel get noticed so more people who are into the same stuff can find us. Plus, it will make me happy and inspired to bring in more guests who are great at what they do. Thanks a lot.
I used to have a list of questions. That's why I didn't bring it. I'm challenging myself not to read.
Right.
Because when I start reading, you are talking to me. I stop listening to you. I'm reading my stuff.
Yes,
so, yeah. I did it again with Ian last time, and I was reading, and then Ian was talking. Shoot, I forgot what he mentioned. I couldn't ask him again about it. So
you often focus on the next cue, the next question, cue, rather than actually. Yeah, I hear you. Okay,
that's a challenge. Thank you for giving me this opportunity for a podcast, Koreru, and talk about autism and your journey, and appreciate your time. Who is, maybe you can introduce, my tongue sometimes is eating me.
So my name's Graeme. I'm a father of 4 children. And I suppose what's a bit different about my particular situation is that in my family of 6, the 4 kids, my wife and I'm the only person who is not autistic. So my wife, my 2 daughters, my 2 sons, everybody else is autistic except for me. So it's an interesting house, and it's all I know, so it's not particularly interesting to me, but I've been told it's interesting to others. Yeah, so I've got 2 girls, they're 9 and 7 at the moment, and I've got 2 boys who are 5 and 3. I've got a couple of birthdays coming up, but that's them at the moment. We've got quite a broad range of you know, how they view the world and how they interact with it, so we've got a lot of communication difficulties with a couple of children where they either don't speak at all or very limited speaking ability. Right across the range, we've got some kids that are very, very little too well spoken sometimes, and you know, they're very well read and, you know, quite social and all that sort of stuff. So I've got quite a broad range of autism in my family. I've also got a good dose of ADHD. And also, we think a couple of instances of PDA as well. So I've got, you know, lots of things going on, but that's my family. We're a pretty special unit. Yeah.
That's why I got curious. I thought when we were having some messages, like changing some messages, when you mentioned 3 kids, like, okay, this is interesting.
Yeah.
Right. My story is different, like 1 kid, okay. And then I met Ian. Okay, PDA. This is interesting. I know about PDA, but I don't know the details. Like, I've heard about it. And I heard it from Chanel Mariah, if you know her. She's the author of the I Am Autistic.
Right. Oh, right. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, my wife knows that. Yeah.
She has a PDA as well.
We've got her book. It's a great book. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And then when you mentioned, and when I was asking you about it, you mentioned, no, I got 4 kids. My wife is also autistic. Like, hang on, this is now like this next level. Like, now I'm curious. So yeah, maybe we can step back. When you met your wife, do you know that she's autistic?
No. Okay. I had no idea. I think it's quite common in a lot of families with autistic children is they see a lot of parallels in their kids' lives and how they view and interact with the world and think, oh, it's quite similar to how I did things when I was a kid. And so adult diagnoses are often on the back of their children being diagnosed, and that's no different for us. So no, when I met my wife, we didn't know that. There was nothing, out of the ordinary or anything like that. It was just when we're sort of reflecting back on things through the lens as parents of autistic kids that we thought, oh, okay, there's something, there might be something going on here. So my wife was only diagnosed just over a year ago, because as an adult, it's not very easy or cheap to get diagnosed.
Expensive.
Yes. Yeah, it is expensive. We're fortunate that Autism New Zealand can offer help with that process. And so that's the process we went. And it took a while to get there. The wait list has a wait list. And also it took us a while to sort of decide whether or not it was important for us as a family or for my wife or for our children for that process to happen. But yeah, eventually we sort of decided to take the plunge, and we ended up with the diagnosis about a year ago.
Is she the one who decided, or is it a family decision?
No, it's my wife. Yes, it's her thing. It's her call. If she didn't want to get it done, then that's fine, I mean, she can speak about this much more eloquently than I, and I think it's probably better that she does. But
you wouldn't notice, right?
No, you wouldn't notice.
You didn't notice her any behavior, any traits, something like that, right?
I think one of the reasons why my wife wanted to get the diagnosis, or at least be confirmed either way, because we weren't sure, until it happened, was to set an example to our kids that, you don't have to be pigeonholed as the Rain Man or whatever it is, you can have a successful career, you can have a successful marriage, you can do all these things and be autistic. It's not, it doesn't determine the trajectory of your life in any way, shape or form. And so that was one of the reasons we thought for our family it was good, to have that process so our kids can sort of see, actually in our family, Dad's the odd one out,
Have you considered?
No. I mean, on the bell curve, I think like if I was a colour, I'd just be beige. I'm so far down the middle of the road for everything. I'm very much not autistic. I don't need to get a test or having a diagnosis done for that. I'm quite confident with that one.
Right.
I have considered it, but then you sort of look for the questionnaires. You're like, no way. Yeah.
Right. My wife is kind of like self-diagnosed. I mean, when I say
it's perfectly valid too. Yeah.
Before my son, my youngest, was diagnosed with autism, obviously you won't know about autism until you have someone in the family. That's where you start to observe things. And then she started observing herself, but she didn't get into the diagnosis because kind of like expensive, and then there's no point for her. That's her point of view. There's no point in terms of her saying like, I know myself, right? I understand myself, so whatever. And then but there are some traits that I'm noticing now, kind of like she said she has OCD.
Oh, yeah.
I know how to annoy her. Like if this is like a straight line, it's a straight line.
Yeah.
You don't like do it like that. She's gonna get annoyed. And sometimes the volume of the TV, it has to be even number.
Oh, I like that too, to be honest, though. It has to be either a 5, like 15, 20, 25, or an even number. Or you're talking crazy land if you're thinking like 23.5 for your temperature in your car or something. Oh, no way.
It has to be exact.
It's gotta, yeah. I can relate to that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So she wanted, if it's a 15, It's either you lower it or you increase the volume.
14. Interesting.
And making sure that it's even. Otherwise, she's gonna get annoyed and she's not gonna talk to you.
It's like an itch you can't scratch sometimes. Yeah.
And the ruler, I mentioned the straight line. Even the ruler, like, it has to be. Even the bookmark, like, if it's placed like that, she's gonna get annoyed. Why is it like this? And then put it. No, I'm gonna put it like. then she gets annoyed, and she can easily get overwhelmed with noise. She can only handle up to 2-3 types of noise, like music, and then we talking, and then TV. When you go more than that, let's say someone is doing a mowing outside, then she's gonna get annoyed. Like, okay, I didn't notice that.
I mean, I can't speak for my wife that much because she can speak about her own sort of environmental and how she processes the world. But she was told during her diagnosis process that the cognitive load when you're autistic is so much higher. Just think from a social perspective, if you don't naturally interact socially, you have to actually make yourself think, is my body language doing the right thing? Is my tone of voice, is my face not sending the wrong vibes, So all these rules they're having to learn, and so therefore they have to think a lot harder. So perhaps their tolerance for more than one noise, or how things are visually appealing, whether it's straight lines, that can be quite hard when you're already focusing so much on other things more than a neurotypical might, because they're just intuitive.
And when they obsess in, like, she loves reading, she can read a book for hours and hours. Like, she will not like do anything, just read. That's okay. And then this thick, like, you already know the story. Summarize it to me. No, you have to read it. I'm not gonna summarize it to you. It's a long story. Okay. So when your first child was diagnosed, what are the traits that you've noticed that gave you the hint that we need to go to the doctor or GP first?
So all 4 of our kids were diagnosed very young, under 2. It helped that my wife has a psychology background, so she's sort of trained in sort of perceiving and viewing how the mind works a little bit more. She's not a psychologist, but she knows a lot of that sort of stuff. But what I think for our eldest in particular, we noticed when her sister was born, they're quite close together, we were wondering, how do we sort of communicate, you're going to be a big sister now, and how you sort of facilitate. It's a big change for a little one, and all the tips and tricks and things we were being given online, we thought, well, she's just not going to get that. We didn't realize, but we couldn't just read her a book, because we knew that it may not be, not receive that information that way, or that kind of thing, and we just realized, actually, hang on a minute, our child isn't able to at that time respond to those sort of parenting techniques that everyone was offering us. And there was a few other things too. We went on a little family holiday, and there was another child very similar age to my eldest, and the way they interacted in that space was very, very different. And we're like, oh, okay, this is a bit out of the ordinary. And so that's when my wife was thinking, oh, maybe it's autism. And so we contacted Plunkett, I think it was. And,
Plunkett, not the GP.
No, not the GP. We didn't go through the GP for that.
That's interesting.
And we actually had a bit of pushback from Plunkett. So my wife reached out to Autism New Zealand, I think it was, and so they sent someone up to our house. We're quite fortunate, actually, in where we live in the Wellington region, that Autism New Zealand is located so close to us.
Easy access, right?
Yeah. And so we got a bit of a postcode lottery, and that's sort of, we won that one, in that sort of sense, because I know that other parts of the country don't have as much easy access to postcode lottery. We're quite fortunate living in the Wellington region, where Autism New Zealand and all the expertise is based, 15 minutes drive from here, and so it was quite easy to make that call and make that contact, and have someone literally came to our house and sat with my wife for a while and had a chat. And I know that's not the case in a lot of other parts of the country. So we're quite fortunate. So that's what happened to us. There was also an app, would you believe, called AS Detect, which comes from Australia. It's a peer-reviewed, properly good screening app that I think actually Plunkett use now with their early screenings. And so we answered the questionnaires, and they show a video of a child at a certain age saying, this is what a typical development profile might look like in this situation, and this is what an atypical, and they show these videos, you can actually see an example, and that's really cool. And so we looked at that thinking, okay, so our child fits this sort of scenario and this sort of scenario. So we thought, okay, we're thinking probably autistic. So I think at that point, we reached out to the Child Development Services. I'm not sure how we actually hooked into them, if that was via a GP, I don't think it was. But either way, went through that process, and the diagnostic process for us was quite smooth. Partly because when children are young, they get pushed up the priority a bit more, because early intervention, for want of a better word, has a greater impact on how your child can manage in certain environments. But also, for our eldest, it was pretty cut and dry. It wasn't a marginal, it was like, oh, yep, that's, yeah, she's autistic. So that was easy for us. So that was our diagnostic process for the first one. And basically from there on out, for our second, third and fourth, we kind of were knowing what to look for. We had a bit more experience with each child, and with each child we could realise that it can be different than other kids, but there are some similarities. And by the time we were pregnant with our fourth, we're like, we really hope this child's autistic, because we don't know how to deal with a neurotypical one. So we're kind of hoping it's autistic, because a neurotypical child, crikey, I don't have the tools for that.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I'd rather have
And it's not like we were hoping for one or the other, but we're sort of thinking, what do we do if this child's not autistic? More than we're hoping for something. We're like, what do we do? So, we've had no real major troubles with the diagnostic process, and I hear that a lot of other families do, but our particular situation, it's not the case in us, yeah.
Is it the same kind of journey for the rest of the siblings?
No. Well, the rest of the siblings, by that point, my wife and I had absorbed as much information as we possibly could. We went to lots of courses, we read lots of books, we interacted with the autistic community, and so by the time number 4 came along, I wouldn't say we're experts, because we're not, but
the traits,
we knew what we were doing and what we were looking for, and by that point the pediatricians and the diagnostic team around us knew us quite well. So you again, but also they could see that we sort of knew what we were talking about within our family units, and so they relied on a lot of our information and took that on board, more so than perhaps if it was your first diagnosis from a new entrant, quote unquote, perspective. Yeah. Right. So with our second child, we had speech delays. For our 2 eldest children, we've got speech issues. So that was one of the easier markers. We did the AS Detect app on all 4 of our kids, and we thought, yep, that makes sense. And some kids it wasn't quite as clear as others. For our third child, he would put a cookie on the floor and then walk around it in a circle to assess the shape and then eat it. We had the lining up thing. We have the beige diet, all that sort of stuff. Been there, done that. Yeah.
It's kind of interesting. The AS Detect, I've only realized about it after my son's diagnosis, and it was only mentioned by Hannah from Wellington, Victoria. Victoria University, Wellington.
Victoria University. Yeah.
I had her in on the podcast as well, kind of like a couple of years ago. Yeah. And then the good thing is, she has started training GPs with the AS Detect. Yeah. So which is going to make it easier. It's not a formal diagnosis for the GPs, but at least
it's a screening tool.
It's screening, so the GPs will have an understanding this is an kind of autism trait. So
yeah, and it has some clout because it's been peer reviewed. It's based on academic research. It's not just some random collection of YouTube clips that someone's put together saying, is your kid looking like Dustin Hoffman from Rain Man? It's not like that. It's a great app. It's not like you say, it's not a conclusion. But it's certainly quite useful for screening if you're thinking that maybe something is going on there. Have a look, yeah.
Especially if you're waiting for waiting time. Last time I checked last year when I was in contact with someone from the CDS because of COVID and other, less doctors, less pediatricians in New Zealand now. It blew up to about 2 years. That was last year. I don't know now. I don't have any info.
I'm not surprised to hear that at all. Yeah.
But I think that AS Detect will be able to like give you an idea. At least you know where you're at in position wise while waiting for the formal diagnosis.
A lot of the supports you can get that you can get without requiring a diagnosis. You don't need the government to give you a stamp. Sure, there's a lot of support you can access once they don't. If you do, I'm not going to say that say that's not a thing, but I would maybe advise anyone who's in the wait list or thinking about joining the wait list is that you don't necessarily have to wait 2 years before you can do something. You can start reading now, start learning now. I mean, one of the things I learnt in the courses I went to and the things I've learnt just raising my children is that a lot of the toolkit I have with my kids maps so well onto other kids that it's great, thinking about just communication, like the use of a visual aid. I might give my child two choices. Do you want chicken nuggets for dinner tonight or 2 minute noodles? Or something, and I hold one fist up and another fist up, and they can tap which fist is to which selection, and that doesn't hurt anyone, doesn't harm anyone, but it's a great way of communicating to anybody to emphasize the choices. And so a lot of those sort of skills and tips and tricks you can learn map on great, whether your child is autistic or not. So don't necessarily have to wait your 2 years for your autism diagnosis before you can start thinking about those processes. And maybe your child isn't autistic and you're thinking about it. Let's not wait 2 years to find out they're not, and then another 2 years to find out whatever it is, So I absolutely would recommend people to jump online, ask the adult autistic community questions and read and learn as much as you can, and don't necessarily have to wait for a diagnosis for that.
And there's nothing to lose, right?
No, nothing to lose. Yeah. It's a win situation. You learn more about another aspect of our community that often don't get heard. You learn some great skills, some great communication skills that map great in any environment, not just an autistic environment. There's lots of wins. I can't think of anything to lose apart from time.
Time.
Which you're investing in yourself. So
you mentioned PDA. Anyone from your kids has PDA, or is it something that has to be diagnosed as well as part of that autism diagnosis?
So we haven't had a diagnosis of PDA, and I don't know. It's not on the DSM-5, which is the current diagnostic manual, which most people in New Zealand use as their benchmark for a diagnosis. So it can't be diagnosed using that tool. But within the autistic community, hearing about people who have a PDA profile, I can see a lot of parallels with my children. I'm not going to say they are PDA or they're not PDA, but we have a pretty fair idea and a bit of an inkling that a couple of them probably do, because they don't respond to certain situations in a way that someone who is not PDA would.
Oh, okay. So how do they play together? Like,
they don't. No, no, they do. A couple of my kids play fine together. Lots of parallel play. So parallel play is like when you're in the same space as someone, but you're not necessarily interacting with them doing the same thing. So you might have a couple of kids drawing pictures together side by side, but not drawing the same picture. There's lots of parallel play like that sort of stuff, but generally speaking, kids just keep to themselves. They've got their own thing. They hang out with us individually, and we do things as a family unit. There are a few games our kids have learned to play together. Might be a little bit of tag or I don't know, hunt the alphabet or that kind of stuff they've learned from YouTube or whatever. But in terms of kids tearing the house down, playing rambunctious games with each other, that's not a thing with our family.
So they don't interact I don't know, maybe tell a story about school after school or something. No. Of my 3 school-age children, 2 of them are mostly non-verbal. So conversation's not really an option in terms of how was your day? Good. What did you do? I did this. That's not something we do. With my other school-age child, I do ask, and you get a grunt. It's good. What did you learn? And then he might parrot back the question back to me, like, "Oh, what did you learn?" sort of thing. But no, nothing like that really. Yeah. So when you say non-verbal, what is that?
I use the phrase non. They do have what I call mouth words, so they do communicate verbally with functional requests and that sort of thing. Like they might want to have some water, please, or shoes on, or I need to go to the toilet, whatever those things are. They do say that sort of stuff, but in terms of a conversation like you and I have, no, that's not a thing. So with those two, we communicate using different tools. So we have AAC, or tōka, yep, so Augmentative Alternative Communication, that's what it stands for. So we've got a lot of tablets around the house. They've all got software installed called Protocol, and that is an assist for them if they're struggling to find the right words, or we often use hand as a tool, so our kids will physically take us from point A to point B and tell us this is what we need, or we'd get them to use descriptors. So my eldest might say dragon. I'm like, oh, you want a dragon? What colour is it? And she'll be dragon. Is it with my fists? One fist, is it pink? Or with my other fist, is it blue? And she'll tap pink or blue, or keep saying dragon. So they'll cycle through the colours and I ask if it's big or if it's small, if it's soft or if it's hard. And she's 9 years old now, so we don't need to go through that whole process anymore, because I can sort of speak her language a lot more fluently now than I did when she was little, and she's learnt more tools and skills as she's grown up too. I can't even remember where I was going with that question now, but so yeah, communication styles. So we do use a lot of spoken words. I can instruct them to do things, and they will go do them or say no. But the two-way back and forth banter, we don't do that.
I mentioned that my son is non-verbal as well before, and non-verbal in a sense that kind of like he's not gonna talk to you like this communication, like there's no two-way communication.
A lot of discourse amongst the autistic community about how quote unquote problematic the term non-verbal is, or pre-verbal, or however that's a thing. I'm not a big fan of that one particularly, because it indicates that your child is going to improve and you don't actually know that, yeah, that's a whole different can of worms. But so there's a whole discussion around it, but I use the word non-verbal just because that's just the path of least resistance. That's what most people within the community will know as, that's what you mean.
Yeah, even the neurotypical community, when you say non-verbal.
Exactly, yeah. So for all the hang-ups that, some people may not be that thrilled with it, it's just, for me, in our case, that's what we use, because it's the easiest way to communicate.
Quite interesting that there's so many terminologies, there's so many pathways, like the GP versus Plunkett versus
psychologists and psychiatrists and all sorts of things.
Why can't we just have just one pathway in place, so it's easier for, like, there's a system in place. Okay, even when one of my friends said, "Did you put your son in weight?" No, because we were given like two options. If we went to weight,
you'd lose the Ministry of Education.
Yes, you lose that, and then it's gone.
Yeah.
Or if you go to the Ministry of Education side, then the waiting list is also long.
Yes.
Waiting list.
Yes.
Now the wait is gone. Like, so there's no kind of benefit either, or that kind of like damn if you do, damn if you don't.
For what it's worth, WEIT, WEIT stands for Wellington Early Intervention Trust. And they're a trust who has a little house out in Lower Hutt, and there are 4 different therapists based there. You've got a speech language therapist, you've got a music therapist, an OT, an occupational therapist, and a child development specialist, I think. I can't remember the fourth term. It's like an early intervention teaching kind of person, specialist. And that's the pathway we went.
All of the 4 kids?
All 4 kids. So all 4 of our kids have gone through WEIT. One of them's still going through WEIT. And they're brilliant. So I'm not very familiar with the other side of the Ministry of Education side of things, because we decided to forego that in lieu of going through the WEIT process, WEIT process. And they're great. Yeah, really cool organisation. Recommend it.
My friend also said that, is your child ORS funded? No, we're waiting for Ministry of Education. Did you fill out the form? No. For us, we're in wait. Someone has helped us fill out the form properly.
So WEIT can help you with that.
Can help you with
yes,
that.
That's right.
Like, what? We should have just gone through that. Okay.
They're a really cool group. I can't speak for anything else because this is all we know, but within WEIT, it's nice because you get to plug into other families who kind of get the gig, and they're all at the same point you are, because all the kids are at the same age bracket. So you go in once a week for an afternoon, and you spend about 20 minutes with each of these 4 specialists, and they just hang out with your kid, and they apply their trade, whether it's speech and language or music therapist, and you learn how to engage with the child, and also when you finish weight, you turn 5, you age out, you enter the school system at that point. But before then, they really help with you getting into a kindy. They help advise you on what kindies might be really good or appropriate for your child. They have staff that go into the kindy with your child for a few hours a week as well, and support your child in there, kind of like a teacher aide kind of situation. And also the OARS applications, they really know how to do a good OARS application. Yeah.
If there's a massive long list in Wait Now, it's because of this podcast.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Let's go to it.
They desperately need some more funding. So if you're looking for a charity to support, I'd plug them, because they do get funding through the Ministry of Health, I think it is. But I think it's the music therapist. They have to fund themselves, and so they do fundraisers, and you have to pay a fee every term, and it's worth it. It's a great group. Yeah.
The only caveat to that is the office is in Wellington.
A Lower Hutt.
Oh, is there?
Yeah, so they're based in Lower Hutt.
Not in Wellington CBD. No,
it's Lower Hutt. In Copeland Street in the Puni, nearby the hospital, that sort of area. Yeah. Okay. So it's just a converted house. Okay. They're based out of in there. Yeah. But they do plug themselves into a lot of kindies and things around the area, because their other staff can help your kids in kindy, so they support the area, mainly the Hutt Valley, I believe, but that's because that's where I'm based, that's where I know. But yeah, Lower Hutt, that's where they are.
But you still went to CDS just for some therapy session and stuff like that?
Not really, not the child development services. We were plugged into the Lower Hutt Hospital Child Development Service. Yeah. We did our paediatrician's appointments through them up to a certain age. And we did a few privately funded speech and language therapy sessions, but not much intervention, quote unquote, through the CDS. It was mainly health support and diagnostics. So yeah, medications and that sort of stuff, and food therapy and that sort of stuff. Yeah, especially in the early days when we were having real trouble with food, they helped us out by sending people out our way to sort of coach us through how we might get our kids to eat a slightly more varied diet, or whatever it was. They did help a little bit, but so we're talking 6 or 7 years ago now that we sort of stopped using that full depth of the service. Mm.
And do you travel a lot with the whole family? Like, I don't know, maybe do a long drive to Taupo or...
No. Our kids are great in the car. They love a good car ride, so they're amazing. One of them does get a bit car sick, which is a problem. It's the same with any child, so I'll take that one as par for the course. No, going on holiday is tricky with our kids. Not for the reason it's just expensive.
There's 6 of you. Yeah,
there's 6 of us. You need a big house, and it needs to have some pretty good locks and a pretty good fence and a pretty good gate. And there's only 2 of us able to keep track of them all. Often it's because you get a bit gun shy sometimes as a parent of an autistic kid. You might have a bad experience at the mall and you think, I'm never going back there again. Same with holidays. I'm not saying we had a bad experience, but probably my own my own cowardice speaking up more than anything else. But no, we've done a couple of holidays. Most recently, actually, we did one in the camper van, which is amazing. Our kids love that. My 7-year-old loves camping and all things to do with that. And so when she found out that you can go camping in a car on wheels, her mind just was blowing. And so that was all she could think about and ask for the next term. So we decided to sort of put our brave pants on, and we hired a camper van for a few days in the last school holidays, and the kids had an amazing time. The environment was theirs. We could move wherever we wanted. We had a home base literally 20 metres out in the car park was our home. So if we had something that goes wrong, we could quickly bail and we're back in our home, as it were. That was a great little holiday, yeah. So we've done a few holidays, nothing big. No airline travel. We're not quite that brave yet.
Any meltdowns?
Oh, yeah. But we know how it works. We know what to do. A lot of the time the meltdowns are because we made a mistake. We put them in an environment that we probably shouldn't have, and we realised there's lots of triggers there, or we pushed them a little bit too hard on a certain day. We should have, been watching them a bit closer and seeing the warning signs, and So yeah, we have meltdowns like any other family does. Absolutely, yeah.
And school is near the house.
Yeah, it's not too far. So both my girls are Oars funded, so they go to a special school in Lower Hutt, and my youngest school child is not Oars funded and he's mainstreamed, and so we decided to go to a school nearby just simply from logistics perspective, if nothing else. It was easier to do the school run going that direction rather than blasting up and down the Hutt Valley all the time. But also that particular school he's in is somewhat plugged into my girls' school, in the sense they share knowledge. I don't really know much about the education system, but apparently like schools are in little cohorts and they can share their special education teams and notes and pass on ideas. And when I heard that my son's school was plugged into my daughter's school, I'm like, right, that's a great place to go. And we had a chat with the principal, and he was all on board with the idea of universal learning, which is a big deal for us. So we thought it was a great fit. Rather than there's another school maybe 300 metres from my house, we checked that one out too, and we decided that wasn't a very good fit for us. So yeah, we have a couple of schools at the moment. Yeah.
What criteria do you have?
What criteria do we have for education, like for a school?
For that school, like it's not, it doesn't fit.
Yeah.
Let's move on to the next.
That's a tricky question.
Yeah, it is.
It is. I'm quite new to the mainstream world. My mainstream child is 5, so I've only been doing it for less than a year. So I can't, I'm not an expert in the mainstream side of things. But the criteria we had was, we get quite sick and tired of organisations who give you platitudes saying, yeah, we're going to make all these changes, we're going to do all these things, and don't follow through. Or they'll say, we'll make these changes into all these things if it doesn't really disrupt or change how we do things already for the rest of the school or the rest of the group. And so when we met this teacher, we spoke about universal design or universal education. And the term universal design is where you design something to meet all needs, not just the ones that are the easiest to meet. So I work in architecture, so the easiest thing to think about in universal design is think about your door handles on your door. Are you going to use door handles? You can use door knobs. What's the height? If you make it nice and low, it's more comfortable for people who are standing to use them, and it's just as easy for someone in a wheelchair to use them. And so that sort of philosophy, we think about how can we meet as many people, how can we change what we do to meet as many people, is really important in the education system. So when I was having a chat with the principal trying to decide and screen which school would work best for our kids, that was one of the things we were gauging, is how does he feel about making sure that he can meet the child's needs, not the child meet their needs.
We're no longer in the 80s where autism is new, right? And I feel like schools should have started, I'm starting to rant now, schools should have started like adapting, like especially public schools, like adapting to the needs of everyone. So that at least, I'm an advocate of children, of course, for various reasons. It depends on from parent to parent, like, right, depending on the child's, what you call that, if it's in high needs or high, I'm messing up the term, if it's in a high needs, if the child is in a high needs that requires like really focus on the education, it's okay. But for me, given for my son, because he's in a high needs, but we wanted him to practice or to start being I'm used to the noise in the grocery, something like that. So that's why I'm trying to advocate for my son to be in a mainstream school. So at least it's like when his brother or his sister will bring him when they grow up in the grocery, it's not going to be like new to him, something like that. So that's why we're kind of like, when I hear stories about schools that are not yet, many of the schools are not yet adapting to that. I feel like, how are they gonna survive the jungle if the school is not kind of like accepting something like that? So it's really tricky, like in a sense. In terms of the whole journey on your part as a dad, what's the most challenging situation that you've encountered?
I mean, as a parent, I'm hopelessly outnumbered. I've got 4 kids and got 2 hands. So I've had some pretty fun, hairy situations out and about where I just don't have enough arms to get everybody up. Been through my share of meltdowns, absolutely. But I tend to view the meltdowns as something I've missed as a parent. There's often warning signs. So a lot of people sort of look at meltdowns as people's cups getting full. So let's say, for example, you're on your way to school and you take a slightly different route to school to avoid traffic, right? And your child can handle that, but you're pouring a little bit of water into their cup that day. And let's say at school, I don't know, their sandwich fell on the ground and it got a bit of sand on it. You know, the cup got a little bit more full, and then maybe by the end of the day, the cup's pretty close to being full. And usually I'll have an idea of what's going on. It doesn't come out of nowhere, those sort of things. And I might have tried something where perhaps early in the day it would have been fine, but at the end of the day it just was all over, had a big meltdown at home. So I look at those things as sort of thinking that was my bad. And I learn, and my wife and I often have a debrief afterwards, particularly early on, about, what do you think that was about? And we're like, yeah, and we think about the rest of the day and what happened earlier in the day, or even earlier in the week, and just look at that behavioural pattern that leads up to that point, and then we sort of try and pivot and respond to from that point. It's a bit tricky when you have 4, but again, a lot of the skills and tools we learn work across all 4 of our kids. We can adapt them a little bit.
Wow, it's the first time I've heard that. I mean, like, usually when there's a strategy with a child, usually it doesn't work with another.
Now, when you throw PDA in the mix, then that gets really spicy and gets a bit interesting. Yes, so that can be a bit more challenging. So one of our kids, we suspect his PDA profile. You give him the little 2-fist control choice thing. Do you want a red one or a green one or whatever? He'd be like, no, I want a blue one. He doesn't play that. He doesn't play by that rule. Doesn't even play the same game. So he can be fun.
So how do you handle that situation?
So we have adopted a parenting philosophy called low demand parenting, or low demand approach.
I heard that from Ian. Is it an approach being used by kind of father or parents with PDA child?
I don't know much of other families within that community. I know that Ian does. And I listen to a lot of podcasts and people within that community, and they sort of have suggested that's a really good approach. So low demand parenting is where you reduce the demands. So for example, what you and I might think of as a demand is quite different to what perhaps a PDA person might think of as a demand. Let's say you need to go to the toilet. Your body telling you have to go to the toilet. That can be perceived as a demand for a PDA person. They don't want to be going, but something is telling them to go to the loo. So when you sort of start viewing your kid's world through the lens of everything as a demand, whether it's putting your shoes on, are you hungry, that kind of stuff, you change your approach so that if they want to do something, you do as much as you can to say yes to that, or to allow that space to be as free from decision-making processes and pressures on them to be conforming to a certain space as possible.
So how do you like the day-to-day routine? How is that? If there's a if there's a couple with PDA, how's that?
It's funny because your routine isn't always great for PDAs, because once you develop and embed a routine, the next step in that routine becomes a demand, right? So it can be tricky. We've somehow managed to wing it so far.
Like school, I forgot to ask that.
Yeah, school. So yeah, we do have some interesting days trying to get to school into kindy, and we tend to mix it up sometimes for that very reason. So just Saturday today, just yesterday actually, one of my kids, he was being a bit difficult getting into the car, and so we quickly pivoted and said, how about I take the train with you today? And thankfully his kindy was a couple of hundred metres from the train station, and that would have been good had the train services not been on strike. But he loved it. He had a bus ride. He loves buses, so that was all good. But so we pivoted that way. Say they want to be taking this item to school. sure, you can take it to school. We do have certain expectations, like they had to be clothed, you had to have the shoes on, that sort of stuff. And if they don't want to be going, we ride it out as much as we can. So we're often late to appointments and things. Certain things we're very careful not to be late for, like a doctor's appointment where you're going to miss the boat. That kind of stuff we're careful about. But your routines in the school run, bedtime, it all works out fine for us. With the bedtime process, we have a couple of set triggers, but at that point we go at their own pace. But they know what time bedtime is. They know at 7 o'clock they're gonna be in bed by that point, and we've never really had a big drama about that, because I think we've been doing it their whole lives. It's not so much that they know the next step's coming, but it's just how things are done. Right. So we're hands off, and they just...
That's good.
Yeah.
My son is like, if you're gonna bring him to bed like 7 or 7:30, even 8, even 9, he's not gonna go to bed. Yeah, he's gonna get mad, and now his cup is gonna suddenly gonna be filled in with like there goes the meltdown. Like,
I mean, thankfully in our case, one of our kids who we suspect is PDA has an amazing empath, really big at empathy, and so she feels a lot, and so she can tell when her siblings are out of sorts if the routine's not being followed, and so she'll make sure that she stays in line with the routine. She gets quite sad when her sister gets very upset, and she'll say, don't cry, and that sort of stuff, which is lovely and beautiful. So if the routine is failing one child, usually our empath will help support it and get it back on track. Yeah.
Any interesting, like, I don't want to ask this, like, what usually it's a typical question, what's your superpower or something like that? Any interests that your kids has?
Oh gosh,
like,
yeah.
Have you noticed
special interests? You mean?
Yeah, special interests.
Yeah, I mean, we don't really go down the what's your special ability thing, because our kids don't know what the weather was in 1973 on a Monday, or that's not us. Right. So yeah, I've got kids who are really big on drawing and art and craft. Just the other day, she made this amazing little bumblebee out of 2 ball pit balls, a couple of screws, and some paintbrushes, and a whole lot of sticky tape. It was really cool. So it's an awesome way for her to communicate too, as well as through art. I've got another child who really loves to read, big on books, and she'll just pour through books all day and loves costumes. I've got another one who loves monsters and all things horror.
They're all different.
It's so different. And another one who just absolutely goes bananas for the alphabet, to the point where we've got so many alphabet sets around the house, including English and Russian, and occasionally he rearranges them to like the QWERTY alphabet on the keyboard and that sort of stuff. He just loves the alphabet. Goes on alphabet hunts with a piece of chalk out in the backyard and writes it down. So yeah, those are the current set of special interests, I suppose. They change from time to time. Right. Over time they'll change. Yeah, and it's really cool because it's a great way as a parent to connect with your kids is through their special interest. So I love seeing my oldest do her art, and I can sometimes doodle along with her. And for a long time before she had the ability and the skills to draw, I'll be doing the pictures with her, and she'd be telling me what to draw, and I'd get my cell phone out and take a picture of the YouTube thing, and then I'd trace my screen and spend ages colouring it in beautifully and then laminating it. And eventually she's picked up the skills herself, and now she's absolutely running with it. My child who loves to read, that's get books and read with her, and she also likes camping and those kind of adventures, and so we do that. I'm struggling to keep up with my child who's into monsters, because he's got like an encyclopedia of monsters in his head with all his names and
monsters.
If you're into Roblox, there's a game called Doors. Yep. He knows all those characters, and another game called My Singing Monsters, which is like so many, I can't keep track. So I'm struggling to keep up with that one, just because his depth of knowledge is so far beyond mine. And with my little alphabet obsessed kid, he anything to do with the alphabet's fine. You can say D is for dog, and then you're away. You can spell out dog with him, or R is for run, and then you blast around the house, and or let's go on an alphabet hunt, and I'll find things, that tree begins with the letter T, what's the next letter? B is for bird, let's find a bird. So there's lots of ways you can lean into it as a parent, is by using their special interest as, a way to get into their space, and it really builds your relationship with them.
I met someone actually when we went to an Autism 101 training. I met a parent whose child knows a lot of dinosaurs.
Oh yeah, we're doing that too. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I thought it's like it's becoming typical for an autistic child who loves dinosaurs.
Yeah,
like
trains, dinosaurs, planets. It's a lot of those sort of common things.
Yeah, common things. And then we were watching Peppa Pig.
Oh, Peppa Pig.
Yeah, Peppa Pig, and George loves dinosaurs.
Oh.
And then we suspect, I don't know what's the reason behind that, that George is autistic.
Yeah. It's funny you say that, actually. My boy is into monsters. There's a bit of a parallel between monsters and dinosaurs in our space. And so we're just getting into the Jurassic Park movies, which is totally age inappropriate, but I do not care. He loves it. He knows what's real. He knows what's not. Yeah. You ask him what's his favourite dinosaur. You think, it's T Rex or a Stegosaurus. No, it's a Pachycephalosaurus. Wow. Just awesome. For what it's worth, a Pachycephalosaurus is the two-legged dinosaur with a big bone head that smashes its head into other dinosaurs. Yeah. So that's his favourite dinosaur, which is awesome. Nice. Or he'll know, he can tell you the difference between a Brachiosaurus and, a Apatosaurus, which look very similar, but he knows one stands up, one stands long. Ankylosaurus. He knows all the technical terms. It's great. Yeah, lots of fun.
So amazing. Yeah, there's so much in that dinosaur. I don't know why. I mean, it's so interesting for kids. I mean, for me, it's like the name that you just mentioned. Like what? And then if we go back to that George story, why we suspect he is autistic as well, not because he's so fascinated with this dinosaur, but also, among his peers, he's the only one who don't talk, who can't speak. Just dinosaur, and then his peers are kind of like mingling and socializing. My wife is the one who noticed it. Like, have you noticed George is not talking? Like, what? You still notice that? Yeah, he's not talking, and then he's obsessed with this dinosaur.
But you can use that interest and really get good communication. Yeah. That isn't verbal communication, but you can still use that interest and leverage it to get that in there. And I really wish kids that age knew that. Because it's adults that know that sort of stuff. You're like, that's cool, but...
Even not just dinosaurs, even just trains or engines or... And one of the main reason why we were talking about why I'm so confused with my life and I built up so many different channels and then I suddenly decided to just have one like this. Another is that I'm hoping that someone later on, once I am able to progress this, someone listening might be listening about an autistic child, heard a story about a band, or maybe I'm gonna have a guest later, not this week, but some other time, who's a specialist, or he did the research in AI. So I'm hoping that some kids might be interested in those cases. So I hope that they can find this and they get interest out of the conversations that we're having, something like that. So it's kind of like a vision that I'm seeing. So anyway,
I mean, so much knowledge in the world has been gained through autistics. I mean, historically speaking, like this, you can look at history and it's just absolutely scattered with people who are probably autistic. Obviously, the diagnostic term wasn't a thing back then, but knowing what we know now and knowing what we know about them then, you can say with some degree of confidence that X, Y, Z person was autistic. And I think the world is definitely the world of this today, thanks to people who are autistic with their amazing focus on that particular area of interest. Yeah.
Have you learned about the book Neurotribes?
Yeah, I've read it. It's great.
Yeah,
it's so good. Well, I listened to it, audiobook. But yeah.
And the test debugger of Microsoft are all having Asperger's syndrome. I'm not sure if you've seen that. If you've seen that area somewhere. Yeah. When he's doing the research, and then someone called him like, all of our testers here are they have Asperger's syndrome. Like, oh, okay. Now there's a pattern there. Because they're looking at the pattern so they can know if there's going to be a defect or not in programs, in application. So like, oh, okay. That makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, the ability to spot things. And, especially when they've got that amazing raise a focus in that area of interest. Yeah. Use it, I reckon. Yeah.
So how are you feeling when you first learned about your daughter was diagnosed with autism? Is there a sense of doubt in yourself, like, what am I doing? Or
No, not like that. Not what am I doing? It was a bit of a shock. And yeah, there are a few things I'm sort of ashamed to say I said back then that I would never say now, that I'll never repeat. And it was a journey for me to sort of come to terms with it a little bit. And I'm not saying it was a long journey, it was certainly quite a short one. I think one thing I struggled a lot with was sort of comparing my family and the benchmarks my family were hitting compared to other families within my community. And I struggled with that. But there was one thing my wife told me quite early on that really made a huge difference. And she said, you know what, if you could take away, and you can't, just want to put that out, there's no cure. I'm not going for a cure thing, it's intrinsically part of who they are. But she asked me, if you could take away, or if autism got taken away from your child tomorrow, how would you feel? And I thought, that would be weird. That would not be my child anymore. The child I love and know, the child of who they are, that's so much part of them. And so then I realised it's not something my kids have. I changed my expectations of what my future might look like and that sort of thing for sure. I checked myself. But no, there was no real major grieving process because quite early on I was able to check myself. There's a mantra that I sort of try and sort of not necessarily live by, but certainly follow as much as I can, is that you can only control your response to things. You can't control your kids. You can't control, the things outside your life that have input. But what you can control is how you respond to it. And so that's what I did. I embraced it. I accepted it, and I love it. It's so cool. Yeah.
So how long did that took you, like, for that journey to be like?
A few months. Couple of months, yeah. Certainly was a shock. But the first thing, my wife is an amazing go-getting kind of person. She'll get it done. If she has something to do, she'll be the person to get it done if she wants to get it done. And so we just learned as much as we could about autism. So we signed up for courses. We got books, got audiobooks, podcasts, reached out to Autism New Zealand. There still is a playgroup in Nainai called Spectrum Playgroup for preschoolers.
Have you been there?
Yeah, we were one of the first families that joined back in the days. Really cool place. Lots of knowledge there. As a matter of fact, I think at that time, I think it's still there, but at the time,
is it?
I think so.
Right.
But at the time, the Child Development Service was plugged in there as well, so they'd send a staff member out there to have a chat with these parents who have undiagnosed children, sort of guide them through that process. So anyway, we plugged ourselves in and jumped in with 2 feet into that sort of world and learned as much as we could. And so that really did help a lot with that sort of adjustment process, I suppose, of what you thought you might be doing in the next couple of years versus what might be really the case. Yeah. So we just reached out and learnt as much as we could. Particularly valuable resource I found, and I still find, even though I've been on this journey for a while now, my eldest is 9, is the adult autistic community they're just such a treasure trove of information. And there are huge communities online, like we're talking hundreds of thousands of people on these Facebook groups who are just there to educate. You can ask them a question and they'll say like, yep, or no, in my experience, this is what happened, or this experience, this is how it happened for me.
Is it here?
It's an international one.
Oh, okay.
I think it's mainly US, but
But the information is worth, like, if you're looking for gold nuggets, you'll find treasure.
Yeah, exactly. And the autistic experience, there'll probably be some cultural differences, but autism is not different, in New Zealand than it is in the States or Europe or wherever. It's still autism. So we found reaching out to the autistic community the most valuable resource, in fact. Reaching out to other parents has been useful, but less so than people with lived experience firsthand as an autistic person.
Right.
I can give you a great example. The special interest. Let's talk about special interest. So one of my kids at the time had a really amazing special interest in the solar system. He knew all the planets, he knew the asteroids, he knew the dwarf planets, he could tell you facts about Neptune, Pluto, which one's the hottest, and all that sort of stuff. It was really cool, and it was fun because both my wife and I enjoyed that sort of thing too, so we had a great little bonding experience over that. Over time, his special interest waned from solar system sort of stuff, which I quite enjoyed, to stuff that I wasn't as enjoying as much, which was monsters. And we're talking like scary monsters. We're not talking like cookie monsters. We're talking like jump scare kind of stuff. And he was really getting into it. And I was thinking to myself, this feels a bit inappropriate, you know. And so we thought, this is okay. This is his interest. He really wants to do this, but I'm struggling to sort of bond over this, and I'm struggling to decide if this is appropriate for him at his age and stage. So we reached out to the adult autistic community and said, you know, in your experience, I never asked them for advice on what I should do, because I'm the expert, not them, but I asked them what it's like for them in their experience. So I said, here's our situation. I've got a child who's, you know, 3.5, 4 years old at the time, starting to get really into monsters, stuff that, you know, you probably wouldn't let your 7-year-old watch, but he's really into it. We don't want this to drive underground with us trying to suppress it, him just sort of getting into this on the sly. We want our relationship to be one of trust. In your experience, how's this been for you? And so the adult autistic community came back to us and said, well, we know what's make-believe and we know what's not. I know this is fake. Monsters aren't real. So I have no problem with this. You know, this doesn't impact my everyday thinking and how I view the world. They're just fictional characters as much as Big Bird is Big Bird, you know, or Peppa Pig is a 2D animated pig, you know. There's no freaky looking pig out there in the real world like that. So you lean into it, and that's what we did. And so having that validation from the adult autistic community was really quite empowering and also quite enlightening for us as well. I think that had I reached out to the parenting community, I think there'd be lots of pearl clutching and like, oh my gosh, what are you letting your child onto YouTube for that sort of content for? Or what are they on Roblox for at that age? And that sort of stuff. And heck, we do get that a lot.
Do you?
No, not a lot, but we have got it in the past. And so by reaching out to the autistic community who have lived experience, first-hand experience in these sort of things, we realise that there's, you know, less harm if we follow this approach. Yeah. So that's a great example of what you can do before a diagnosis, in fact. You know, if you're thinking...
Join some groups, right?
Yeah, join some groups. Ask the experts, and the experts are autistics. You can talk to pediatricians till you're blue in the face. You can talk to psychologists till you're blue in the face. And they'll have a lot of good knowledge and good research and experience from seeing other families in that situation. But you're never going to get anything quite as gold as an autistic speaking about the autistic experience.
Yeah. And it doesn't have to kind of, how should I phrase this? There's a chance that it may work, but there's also a chance that it will work, right? It might, it may. My English is kind of like wrong grammar. No, as long as you understood what I'm trying to.
And that's not to say that, you know, autistics are just like cookie cutter stamps of each other. They're not. But you do get a lot of good input from people who have a lot of parallel stories about, you know, in the monster situation in their lives, it went badly because their parents suppressed it, or, you know, another one said it went great because my parents encouraged it. Now I'm really into these things, you know. Or another one said, I don't talk to my parents anymore now. I'm 30 something and they're cut off. Yeah. That was then because of how things started way back then. And so, yeah, that's how we've reached out. And we certainly don't look for parenting advice. We look for experiential anecdotes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, the experts in the parenting stuff is us and our family. I know my family more than anyone else.
Right.
No one can claim to know my kids more than me. So we look for advice from the outside about their experience, but we certainly map that onto our situation and adapt it to as how it suits. Yeah.
Because one autistic person is just one autistic person, but other kids, I don't know how they're experiencing the world. You wouldn't know unless they tell you this is how I see the world, right? So with tablet, you mentioned about tablet. For my youngest, we no longer have the allotted time. Like for the other two, they have
you
two.
don't restrict your screen time.
No, just for the autistic one. But for the I don't want to say neurotypical because he's not. I feel like he's not the eldest. Anyway, for the two others, they only have like 2 hours because sometimes they forget to, like, we're teaching them like doing some chores and stuff like that. So now they're getting hold of the chores. But for the youngest, he's got until such time that the tablet is drained. That's it. But there's there are no restrictions like you only have 2 hours or something like that. Because from there he's learning how to speak.
Yes.
So
right.
and then he's not watching YouTube just for the sake of watching YouTube. He's watching like counting. How would you stop someone from learning how to count watching YouTube? He doesn't want to listen to me if I will teach him like 1, 2, 3, 4. You're boring.
And if you map that onto like a low demand parenting approach as well, if you're not in a low demand parenting approach and your child has anxiety issues or PDA around the screen time thing, if their tablet is a regulating device and it helps them to sort their regulations out because they can just zone out from the world and get themselves on a screen, if they know that time is going to end in 15 minutes or 20 minutes or 30 minutes or whenever, then that tool that they use for regulation has just been undermined because they're freaking out about what's coming up next. Is this going to get taken away? So I'm a big advocate for not restricting screen time. We don't do it here at our house either. We've got so many tablets, it's crazy, but we don't restrict screen time. And it is tricky because some of our kids use it to regulate and some don't. But we think that in our particular situation, it's easier to be kind of consistent across the whole board. And so the ones that don't need the tablet for regulating themselves with screen time, they just put it down sometimes and go blast and go read a book or go jump on the trampoline or terrorize the cats or whatever it is. And the ones that do use screen time for regulation will use it to regulate. Yeah.
And sometimes we notice for my son, even if he has unlimited time in tablet, sometimes he puts it down and then he starts jumping on the trampoline. And then
that's a great sign that,
he's not like addict.
The function of the screen is doing its job, which is to help him regulate himself, get himself back into a good space, tune out the world, get some cool input with numbers or whatever the content is he's watching of his interest. And then when he's done, he can go get some physical input on the trampoline or whatever it is,
Like a week ago, we were talking about the background noise or sometimes music. Sometimes he uses it as a background music. If you turn it off, he will come back and turn it on. Like, hang on, that's my tablet. Why are you?
Stop that.
He learned how to draw, how to write. I mean, he's still writing using his finger, but holding the pen like this.
Same.
Same.
Yeah.
Okay, he's holding pen like this. They are now teaching him how to hold it properly, so he can write it well. So he's not gonna get any challenges in his.
Yes, because it's not very natural position.
He learned how to write there. So why would you stop it? So I'm assuming this is just my theory. You only have limited. You only limit a child who's watching a tablet if it's already like Instagram, for example. There are a lot of fake stuff in Instagram, like trying to show you that this is the life you're in, like a fantasy of life or something. Like I'm messing up with my terms again. So it's kind of like if you're in social media where it's so very, very noisy and so very kind of like judgy, judgmental and stuff like that. I feel like that's the one that they should be limiting. But if you're learning in tablet, I don't think you should stop the child from learning, like writing, listening to music.
We found YouTube to be quite good for similar reasons. So first of all, YouTube has given our kids words that we use the same words in a spoken context to my children, but when it's from a medium of a screen, it comes in a different way to them and it absorbs in their brain better. So for our kids, YouTube gave them words. Other things we're really leading into with the screen time is that, again, with YouTube, the algorithms tell us what our kids are interested in. we learn more about our kids through their YouTube history than I would through a conversation, because I don't get that conversation with my kids. I don't have that tool. So I can see what they're interested in by watching them on their tablets, you know.
Is it YouTube Kids or?
YouTube Natural. YouTube Kids we do have, but I find that the content on YouTube Kids is a bit too limited to their interests, particularly my one who's into monsters. He would not find that on YouTube Kids.
So what do you usually do if by some accident sometimes there's some swearing or some videos that are inappropriate for
it's tricky, and we haven't had to manage really inappropriate stuff yet. Yeah, there's some language issues. They're going to get that in school anyway, but
that's nothing new,
there are some. There's sometimes we hear bad words being used, and they might parrot it back to us, you can't use that word, and we just deal with it as it comes up. The monster thing was a great example of us trying to figure out, what do we do with this algorithm? Do we let it run and see where it takes them, or do we start deleting history and clearing it out because it's a bit spooky and a bit scary? But no, we kind of, our kids are quite good. They share the one YouTube account, so they kind of all feed into it a little bit.
Sneaking
and we can sort of see. Yeah. And they don't go on my phone because it'll just kill my perfectly honed algorithm. But no, it's taught us so much about their personalities through those sort of platforms. And you know, had we restricted their screen time down to 20 minutes a day, or heck, I don't even know what the convention is these days for parents as far as screen time limitations, but if we restricted it anyway, in any way, shape or form, I feel like I wouldn't know my kids to be the people who they are now the way I do now. Yeah.
So
I'm a big advocate for it. Yeah.
That's how they find their interest in
it. Absolutely. Yeah. Planets, you know, when my kids were reading into the solar system.
Have you been to that planet?
Yes, Space Place.
Space Place.
Oh yeah, we love that. Yeah. So he was absolutely super excited, shouting at the top of his lungs, "It's such and such, you know, it's Maki Maki, it's Haumea," or whatever these dwarf planets or whatever. He loved it. And actually, I just saw recently on Trade Me, the Space Place is doing selling some of their exhibitions. They're obviously making space or doing a revamp, and I was like, should I? I decided not to go there. I don't have that sort of money anyway, but I considered it for half a second, but I thought, no, that's silly, Graeme, don't
do you want to buy an Earth?
Yeah, exactly. It's going to cost you the Earth, I'll tell you that. But yeah, so again, the YouTube algorithms and that sort of stuff, the rabbit holes it takes them down, and the content it suggests to our kids, that's shaped their interests. It might have shaped their interest, I suppose, but it's also, you know, they're learning about themselves and what they like and what they don't like.
And it's easier to find, like, it's probably like, let's say you won't find a train, for example, an example of a train every day, unless you go to the train here or a fire station or something like that. It's easy for them to find it in YouTube.
Yeah. And if your kid's not interested in trains, and you take them to the train station, you've wasted a day, you might have had a meltdown, all that kind of stuff. I do believe in technology making our lives easier and leaning into technology to support us a lot. You might even see in our house right now, I've got cameras in the house all through the inside of the house, which is unusual. Normally we have cameras outside the house. In our case, we have them outside too, but we have cameras inside the house so that when my wife and I aren't here, our nannies can call us and say, I'm having a problem. We can tune into a camera and we can talk them through the problem in real time. And so we can decode what our kids are saying to our nannies. You know, they're saying this particular phrase and it's not enunciated the way you would normally expect. And so we'd be listening and saying, oh, that means she wants a blanket put over here like a fort. Problem solved. So I'm a big believer in technology supporting us, and YouTube is a great way.
But that's where we're heading.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
like, it's not like technology will be gone tomorrow.
No, exactly, yeah. And again, I mean, your kids are going to access the stuff some way, shape or form, whether it's at school, through their friends. What better place to do it than at home?
Even my wife was saying to me, would you rather have him, like, steal some time for the tablet that outside, or just here, so at least you're aware of what he's watching? Or
Exactly. And, you know, we haven't thankfully had the situation where we've had to control that content. If we do, we tend to ask first about it and sort of think, what are the consequences of this? But, at home, you can. It's a safe place.
So I'm curious now in terms of daily living skills. Have you had a thought or any plans at this point? I know it's probably
Like
too early.
independent living, you mean?
Daily living skills that you want to impart or teach your
I see.
kids. I know it might be too early now, but as for me, I'm starting to think about it like now, how am I going to teach him daily living skills when he doesn't even?
It's a tricky one, isn't it?
Yeah.
One of the courses we went on in the early days was sort of saying, think about a process you want your kids to learn, and then break that down into smaller steps.
Okay.
And then break that down into smaller steps again, and then break that down again into smaller steps, and then start working on those small steps.
Okay.
So, an example would be toileting. You know, the number of steps you think about involved in toileting is one. Listening to your body, knowing what that means. The other one is getting up from what you're doing, putting the thing down, knowing it's safe, going to the toilet. Another one is putting the lights on. Then you take your pants down, you've got to go to the toilet, do the whole process. And it's probably like 5 or 6 steps during the toileting process itself. Every one of those steps you've got to break down and teach your kids. And it takes a long time, right? You can't just do it overnight. So when it comes to independent living, we are just taking it one step at a time, I suppose, at the end of the day. So we don't think, right, at 18, I'm going to kick him out of the house, they're gone, they're flashing.
You're on your own.
Yeah. That's not the approach we're taking. It's just when they're ready. And so that takes the pressure off us, thinking that, oh man, I've got a deadline I've got to follow, and that's really stressful. I force my kids to learn these sort of stuff, and my relationship breaks down with my kids because of it, because I'm pushing them through. You need to be toileting by the time you're 5 years old, or whatever it is. I'm just using toileting as an example because it's the first thing that came to mind. But yeah, when it comes to imparting life skills, sure, there's a lot of pressure on us to get it right, on any parent, to teach your kids life skills. But once we sort of remove that time frames and sort of just take it one step at a time,
Remove your worry.
you just get through it. It's easier. So there's some things we're behind on than other parents, even within our own community, our autism community. But that's cool. We're cool with that.
You're not pressured.
No pressure. Yeah.
I know someone who's behind at school, behind his peers for 3 years. 3 years, and then obviously the parents are worried, kind of like behind for 3 years. So it's tricky in a way that when you're behind, especially if you're an Asian like me, coming from Philippines, and you're behind 3 years, that's gonna be like too much pressure.
Right.
And good thing we're here. There's not much pressure. Like if your child is behind that, I don't care. I mean, like in Philippines now, if you're behind, that's gonna be pressure on the child, pressure on the parents. Like you start to compare. This is me growing up in the Philippines. You start to compare yourself to others, to other parents as well. Kind of like all the pressures coming in. Right.
Sounds hard.
It is. Yeah. And especially for the child, like you're expecting the child to excel. My English, come on.
Very different outcomes.
Yeah. Like, hang on, I might say something different. So to excel on education, and here they have, the good thing here is they have option, like if you excel in sports, that's your thing. We'll support you in sports. If you excel in math, for example, we'll support you in math. It's like there's like choice. There's a choice. They have control. The kids have control on what they wanted to do. But in Philippines, if you don't finish your college or school, in most cases, the parents don't want that because they won't get a good paying job because it's a third world country.
Yeah.
So basically, you need to make sure that you're able to finish college. But here, it's not always the case. That's what I'm trying to...
I mean, earning potential aside, you're never too old to learn, but you only get one childhood. So heck, look at me, I retrained at 34 years old. You know, I'm certainly not earning the same amount as perhaps I started if I trained the same thing back when I was in my 20s, for sure, I get that. But you can learn the academic stuff later. It's great if you can, when you can, so you can get on that ladder earlier. But you get one childhood, you get one relationship with your kids. I think it's for me, it's probably more important. So academic success is really important, really important. But if you know that even with all the pressure and or even supports you're putting into your child, they're not still meeting those milestones, they're not going to meet it. More supports you put on them, necessarily more pressure you put on them. So let them go at their own pace. They'll get there. Yeah.
And they can always go back and relearn what you've done.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Yeah.
If they think it's not the path that they should be taking.
Yeah, you're never too old to learn.
Yeah.
If you can read, you can do maths, that's great. You can read and learn how to read when you're 50. I've heard of a guy in the UK who's very famous, very successful man, didn't read until he was 51 years old.
Really?
Yeah. He just faked it until he made it. Then one day, actually, I think I should probably learn how to read. And he's some TV celebrity guy. He's pretty clever chap. But I'm not saying you shouldn't, because you should. It's really important skills. But heck, don't force it if it's not going to happen at that pace. Yeah.
And we haven't even touched the dyslexia.
What's that?
We haven't even touched the dyslexia topic.
Oh yeah, gosh.
So meaning, if education reading is so important, which it is, but how about for those with dyslexia, and they won't be able to learn how to read in that instance? So anyway, it's a kind of totally different topic. Yeah. Any instruments that they are interested in?
Instruments, musical instruments. Percussion, because they bang things. No,
it's kind of like
no, sadly not.
Self-taught.
I play the piano myself, and my wife's a singer, and before kids were in a band, and so my wife and I are quite musical. Sadly, their interest has not been imparted. So I still play piano sometimes in the other room, and I get, no! I'll play the alphabet song. So little Philistines have not discovered music.
Right. You were in the band?
Yeah, little pop covers band. My wife was in a big 16-piece swing band for a while as a singer, which is pretty cool. Ooh. So we were cool before kids once. Music therapy. My kids really enjoyed music therapy at Wellington Early Intervention Trust. But as far as musical ability and musical interest, there is some passing interest in certain genres, but as musical skills, not something we've really pursued. Yeah. Got beautiful voices, and they'll tinker away at the piano if they want to, but
it's no pressure.
No, it's from what I can see right now, it's not their main interest.
Right.
Yeah.
Music therapy. What do they do about that? What do they do in that? Do you still remember?
One of my kids is still doing it. I've got a 3-year-old still at weight. So at 5, you finish off weight. It's hard to explain.
Is it?
It's probably a question you want to ask a music therapist, but my experience as a parent who has gone to weight a few times, is you have certain goals. Let's say able to transition from one activity to another, and a music therapist might help support that by playing a game with a child using music, where they might improv a song while the kid's bouncing around the room saying, little Timmy's dancing, and the kid will get grooving away, and then you try and transition them from that dancing activity to a different activity, let's say playing hide and go seek, and you might change the song to hide and go seek sort of song, and so you facilitate that through music. So you set a goal, and then you use music as a vessel from which you can help achieve that goal. I don't know. I'm thinking off the top of my head here as a layman.
No pressure.
Let's say there's a certain set of words or some sort of speech skills you're trying to impart. Music's a great way to get those words ingrained, because there might be melody associated with it that you can use, or a certain cadence. And music's a really good vehicle to help with that too. Yeah, right. And it's really fun. Music therapy is so much fun.
I thought you're kind of listening to like the Mozart and.
Oh no, yeah, no, it's wait, there's several music therapists. Depending what day you go there, you get a certain one. They're very highly skilled, very highly trained, degree qualified musicians, and within music therapy as well. They're really bright people. They're all crazy bright there. But yeah, they'll sort of. It's hard to explain, but yeah, they just sort of help facilitate certain goals you've set.
Yeah.
Using music as the vessel to help sort of push that along.
Have you tried the riding for disabled somewhere?
Yeah, we've done that. Yeah.
Okay, how was it?
That's really cool. So three of my kids have done RDA through various ways. My girls do it through their school. It's quite cool. So they'll trot along and they might say, let's touch the red triangle that's on a post, and they'll touch it. Teaches them sort of motor skills, and it helps some kids sort of vibe out a bit nicer when they're with a horse. So I don't know how it works, but horses are pretty amazing, pretty calm, pretty chilling. My little ADHD girl, she likes getting nice and quick, and she likes the sensory experience of bouncing along on a cantering horse, because it's sort of that cadence as you're going ba-dum, ba-dum, ba-dum. She quite enjoys that. Yeah, I mean, heck, if we could afford it, we'd buy a horse. Thank goodness we can't. They're expensive. But yeah, they do lots of cool stuff. They're like that sort of like motor skills or decision-making skills. Again, you're riding a horse and you're given various challenges and tasks.
Yeah. Temple Grandin, I think that was Temple Grandin who explained it, like, because of the horses, kind of like when the horse is walking, you have like that sensory.
Yeah, that's why cadence.
Yeah, cadence.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, they're using the horse in terms of therapy, because the horse is kind of like understanding the emotion. Someone explained it. I forgot about the whole detail, but it's kind of like the horse understand how you feel if you're sad.
I've heard that horses can sort of vibe off you. Yeah. Heck, even in our house, we've got a bit of a zoo. We've got 2 dogs and 2 cats, and we found that the cats in particular have a wonderful calming effect on a couple of our kids who are struggling, because they just love how fluffy and cute and ridiculously chilled they are. And they'll go on and give them a little pat, or we do things what we call as a circuit breaker. So if our kids are stuck in a bit of a rut or they're getting quite dysregulated, we'll use a circuit breaker that might be something to do with their special interest, like an alphabet, or getting a kiss from the cat, and they get out of that funk and snap out of it, and they're able to sort of switch tracks from that yucky downward spiral they're doing into something else using that cat. So animal therapy it's a thing. It's a thing. I've heard about therapy dogs, and last night I caught one of my cats on one of my son's bed, who just loves the cats, and had he known the cat was on his bed, his mind would have just exploded. He was happily sleepy there. I was like, man, if you knew what was going on right now, you'd so fizzing with excitement. But no, the cats hang out with us.
Okay.
Just because it's how it works.
Misconception of autism. Have you experienced any?
Yeah, we have. We get quite commonly the phrase, "Oh, we're all on the spectrum," which that triggers me somewhat. Like, no, you're either on the spectrum or you're not on the spectrum. And I like to think of the spectrum as more of less of a continuum from point A to point B, and where do you sit on that continuum. I like to think of it more of as like a colour chart, like a colour wheel, and various aspects of that colour wheel indicate various areas you're very good at or need extra support with. So yeah, we get that a wee bit. As a matter of fact, we got it once from a school, Senko, and so we decided not to send our kids to that school.
Because of that statement.
Like, okay. Or other reasons as well, but that was certainly one of the red flags that led up to it. Misconceptions. Developmentally, elder kids don't connect quite as well with kids their similar age groups, and so at church we have them with younger age groups because it sort of fits them a bit better, and we're a bit nervous about the fact that people look at them as if because they're bigger they're somewhat more dangerous or a bit different and they don't interact with them in the same way. So that sort of misconception that you're uncomfortable around kids you don't know. And heck, I can speak to that. When I was a kid, my own age, when I was young, I didn't like hanging out with the weird kids, quote unquote. I'm a bit ashamed about that now. As a matter of fact, I've looked up some people from my childhood trying to sort of call them up. And so there's a bit of that going on. Misconceptions that, you're a bit more uncomfortable around these different people, and you shouldn't be. They're pretty awesome. Yeah.
I used to have that same thought that we are all in the spectrum. I used to have that.
It's not uncommon to hear.
Yeah, I think it was my wife. I said it to her we're all in the same kind of spectrum. No, either you're autistic or you're not, and definitely you're not autistic. She said to me
corrected you right there on the spot.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
Okay, and then I was telling one of the first names of the page, Takiwātanga page, before Takiwātanga, it was like, we are the spectrum. I was like, that's the dumbest name that I've thought of. Like, we are the spectrum.
A lot of it feeds in because people just don't know what they don't know, right?
Yeah. That's why I'm guilty of that. Like,
yeah. Heck, I've got lots of things I thought about earlier on that I've sort of learned about. Oh my gosh, what were you thinking? But at the time, I didn't know, right? Yeah. So I mean, heck, if people are sort of starting on this journey and new on this journey, well, one piece of advice I'd probably give to them is learn. Get your philosophy right as soon as you can. Justify your philosophy about this whole autism thing. Is it a burden? Is it not? It's not a burden, but you need to...
There's a challenge, definitely.
Yeah, it has challenges for sure, but it's not something that's happened to you, you know, it's just what it is. It's like, just a way, you're left-handed or you're right-handed, are you red-haired or blue-eyed? It's just a thing, right? So, especially for people who are new on the journeys, are quite keen to get out there and sort of advocate, or sometimes, dare I say, feel sorry for themselves a little bit. And I think it's really important just to learn as much as you can, as quick as you can, to sort of know what's going on before you start saying things like we're all on the spectrum, or
we are the spectrum. Like.
Or use functioning labels. That's something I'm not a big fan of. So high functioning versus low functioning, or even the word Asperger's. I'm not a big fan of that either, because that denotes a certain level of competence and functionality, which is perceived from the outside rather than the person's ability. So, heck, you know, someone might be really bright, really great talker, but is absolutely crippled with social anxiety that they can't even leave the house. Someone who isn't maybe got the greatest speaking ability, but is really social, you know, but can leave the house. Tell me who's high functioning in that situation. You don't know, right? So that's why I don't like those terms, functioning labels, or high functioning, low functioning. There are areas which require more support, for sure. And again, with Asperger's, I think that indicates a certain level of functionality that, you know, that there's a reason why it's not in the DSM, in my opinion. So all that sort of stuff. If you're new to the journey, just listen and learn as much as you can. It's misconceptions, I suppose. Rounding it back to that, yeah.
And it's okay to pause sometimes if there's a chance, but I don't know, for you, I don't think you have a quiet time.
It's quiet now. They're all in bed asleep right now, so it's lovely now. Yeah.
No, it's not quiet. I'm here annoying you. And then yours.
That's fine. Yeah.
What is autism?
What is autism? I like to ponder the question first. What is autism?
That's okay.
I'm still learning that answer. I think it's the easiest way to say that. You can easily look online for the boilerplate answer, whether it's difficulties with communication and social skills and that kind of thing.
But it's in your definition.
But in my definition, again, it's all I know, because I don't have any neurotypical children and my family's very different. I've got no benchmark or baseline to compare myself with. What is autism? It's just a difference with the way you perceive and interact with the world. That difference can be manifested in ways from sensory challenges or strengths, or communication challenges or strengths, and that can exacerbate itself into behavioural challenges or strengths as a result of those issues or difficulties or abilities. But yeah, it's just a difference with the way you interact with the world.
Okay. Any final message? You mentioned the final message a while ago, right? Remember, if you've been doing some emails, right? Like email in the office, right? Like draft version, final draft version, final
draft version 4. Yeah,
any final
I've
message?
got a few files like that at work. Any final message? Actually, yes. Hang on. I think this is probably a message more to parents in relationships, but I think a healthy relationship is really important, and in an environment where you are constantly questioning and challenging everything you know about parenting and having to relearn everything, the rule book you're going to throw out the window, is really do what you can to keep your relationship healthy with your spouse. make time for them. I mean, got these board games back here. This has been an amazing thing for our relationship. You can often have quite heavy conversations when the kids are in bed about their future or educational things or the next pediatric appointment. And we have a lot of appointments because we've got 4 kids. So there's a number of appointments you have with any one child, multiply that by 4. We've got a lot of stuff. But it's nice to have a space for my wife and I just to decompress over a board game and just connect relationally after a tricky day sometimes. That doesn't involve heavy conversation around autism stuff. So I think, if you can, cherish your relationship and do what you can to make sure it stays healthy or gets healthier or get yourself in a place to be healthy. Whether that's getting out of there or whatever, how you respond to that situation is under your control. But cherish it.
Thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. I know it's getting late.
It's fine. It's fine.
Yeah. It's kind of like 10. Ooh. Thank you.
It's all good.
Appreciate your time.
No problem.
Cheers.
Good fun.
So, thank you for having me. No, that's a mistake again. There's a
Take 2.
take 2.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you. Thanks for coming.
Kind of
I
like
think maybe you should thank me afterwards, perhaps once you hear what I've got to say, maybe because you're like, oh, that was a mistake.
why am I here?
Yeah, that was a waste of time, so I'll see.
No. Okay. Thanks you. My tongue. Thank you for